All right, well, welcome back to MissouriNet.com and maybe SportsTalkSC.com. Or Kevin McCrarey, sports director there. Are you going to put this on your website, or is it even worthy of talking about Mizzou and South Carolina basketball for your website?
Well, basketball is a tough topic in this part of the world when you're talking about South Carolina. But believe it or not, and I say it in all seriousness, South Carolina is having one of its best basketball seasons that they've had in the past 5 years. So this is progress for them, believe it or not. And I know it's nothing to write home about, but they are actually feeling better about things right now, at least inside the program. I can't speak for the fans. They're pretty disenfranchised at this stage.
Well, they're not doing all that bad. 15-15. They're 6-12 in SEC play. I've looked over the second half of the season, Kevin. A couple of wins over Georgia. They had a win over Mississippi State. That win over Tennessee was pretty impressive, 60-49. After losing by 20 to Arkansas, they come back in a game where they're down by 20, 21 points, actually go up by 11, and then end up losing. But that was a close game. So, I mean, they've played well in the second half of the SEC tournament, or schedule, I should say.
Yeah, and they've had some things not go their way. They've had a lead in the final 5 minutes of about half of those losses and just weren't able to finish. They've had some injuries, some suspensions, a couple of guys that won't be playing in this SEC tournament, and Shamik Shepard and Demetrius Henry, two guys that they were using, especially Henry inside. They've been suspended since that Georgia game. They found a way to hold it together and win a few, and that's good for them. I mean, they didn't mail it in. Frank Martin isn't known for being the most patient guy, but I just left his press conference, and he's not doing cartwheels and dancing the jig, but they played a very difficult schedule, and this, Bill, that the SEC this year is, from a basketball standpoint, in my opinion, the best it's been in a decade, top to bottom. I mean, Kentucky's Kentucky. You throw them out. I mean, they're in another stratosphere. But Arkansas, Texas A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, Georgia, these are really good basketball teams, and they'd be good basketball teams in any conference. So I'm pretty impressed with the league this year.
All right, so what do you see in this matchup? Well, first of all, I want to go back to this game because you and I haven't had a chance to talk face-to-face, but when Missouri was down there, you saw the horrific injury to Wes Clark. What was it like being there and witnessing that?
Yeah, that wasn't a pretty thing to watch. It was, that was a late game. It tipped off late. The arena was maybe a third full. I mean, it was almost empty, so you could hear everything. And the media's close to the court anyway. And he went down, and I didn't actually see him get hurt. I just saw him go down, and there were players around him. But I heard him, and the arena just got quiet, and he is writhing in pain and screaming, and the assistants come to him. Frank Martin jumped off the bench immediately. He saw it and got some help over there. And then when he was walking off the court, and you could see that elbow. It was a grotesque injury, but I was very happy that it wasn't worse. I mean, and he's a great player too. I mean, you watched him play a lot. I only got to see him play for about a half before he was injured. I really like Wes Clark and the way he plays, and he's bought into the system there. And that was a tough thing to watch. You don't like to see good players go down with those kind of injuries, and fortunately it wasn't worse for him.
Yeah, it looked like he was kind of starting to turn a corner and, like you say, buy into Kim Anderson's system. At 9-22 and a 3-15 record, I'm not sure there's much that he would have done, even though they've won a couple of games here down the stretch. But what did you take away from that first Mizzou-South Carolina meeting, and how can Mizzou beat Carolina? Because I would say the majority of the fans are not looking at this 11-14 matchup and saying, oh, we got a chance at this thing. I mean, Mizzou fans are writing this season off.
Yeah, well, I mean, because Mizzou, they have a higher standard there. I mean, this is a program that expects to go to the NCAA tournament and make noise. I mean, and that's Mizzou basketball. So this is certainly a tough season. But from a South Carolina standpoint, they want to go and win a few games in the SEC tournament. They want to have a winning record. Frank Martin said today, somebody asked him, hey, would you take one of those lower-tier tournament bids like the CBI? And he said, yeah, why wouldn't I? I'd be happy to do that. What I took out of that Mizzou game, you talked about, the Wes Clark injury. What really impressed me about that team is Mizzou came into that when they had lost like 9 in a row, but they fought back after the Clark injury. That kind of galvanize them. They didn't have any guards. I mean, they were running out of point guards, and they still found a way to get out there and get back in that game and push the Gamecocks late. And I thought that that said a lot about what Kim Anderson has with that team, at least not fully. And I think that's something Mizzou fans should be proud of. The Gamecocks, they like to give them away. They blew a 20-point lead at Vanderbilt, lost that one. You mentioned the double-digit lead they blew against Arkansas in the final 7 minutes. You know, you're up 11 with 7 to play. That's at home. That's usually a win, but that didn't turn out that way for the Gamecocks. So how do you beat them? Well, you drop back in a 2-3 zone, and you dare them to shoot. And usually that's going to work for you because, by and large, the Gamecocks have not shot well, although that said, they have shot well, or better, I shouldn't say well, but they have shot better in the past couple of weeks, and that's why they're starting to win some of these games. They're knocking down shots, and most teams have just zoned them this year and watched the Gamecocks brick themselves out of games where now they're knocking down the shots, and that's how they picked up some of these wins.
And, you know, that'll be interesting, too, as we've got the bracket up, but I'll go back to here. What'll be interesting is I think you can beat Mizzou by pounding them inside, and so even if Mizzou comes out in a zone, if they try to get the ball inside, you know, your big guys, the Lithuanian guys, Sindarius, Thornwell, those guys all had pretty good games in this last meeting. That's where Mizzou really lacks. They don't have the muscle.
Yeah, and South Carolina's doing, you know, they don't have a true dominant big man. I guess Akevich is one of the Lithuanians you mentioned. He's the closest thing to that, Lamonas Akevicius. And he's a big body inside, and you know what? I think he's a solid player for them. Demetrius Henry, who did play in that first matchup against the Tigers, won't be out there. He was one of their starters inside, so he's not there anymore. They've been Michael Carrera, who's not a big guy in stature, but he plays big. He's leading the team in rebounding. He's from Venezuela. He's kind of that energy guy that comes in there and fights hard for them. So they have guys that are scrappy inside, but that's really not the strength of their team, is getting the ball in the paint. I mean, and most teams have been okay with that. They're fine with letting the Gamecocks shoot outside, but you know, Dwayne Notice, one of their guards, is playing better outside, knocking down some shots. You mentioned Thornwell, who had a great freshman year. He was an all-freshman performer last year. He's a little dinged up this year. I think he's got some knee issues going on. He may or may not need surgery after the year. But yeah, he hasn't been the same player on offense or defense that he was last year. But he is still a talented player, and certainly one of their best players.
Yeah, I remember you talking about him last year and saying keep an eye out for that guy. Well, he certainly had a big bucket late in that game to kind of push South Carolina over the top against Mizzou. So, all right, what is it, one and done for whoever wins this thing, and then they run into Ole Miss and the tournament's over for either team?
Yeah, you know, the Gamecocks played Ole Miss. You know, it was typical of a lot of their games. I mean, South Carolina, they're kind of a goofy team in the fact that, you know, they blew out Oklahoma State. They blew out Iowa State, you know, a top 10 team on a neutral court. You know, Arkansas is a top 20 team, and they were down, spotted them 20 and came back. I mean, in flashes, you say these guys can play with people. You know, even against Kentucky in Columbia, you know, for a majority of that game, it was, you know, single digits. They were hanging around, so they feel like they can go and win a game or two. They think Ole Miss is a winnable game. They beat Georgia twice, so I mean, I don't think they're going to write themselves off. And I really believe them. Looking these guys in the eye, they're confident going into this tournament. But you know, I wouldn't be shocked if South Carolina won 2 games in this tournament the way they're playing right now. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if Mizzou knocked them off tomorrow night either.
Oh, I would be shocked. Let me put it there. I'd be shocked. But yeah, you're right, though. If they get past Ole Miss, they beat Georgia twice, this South Carolina team could be in the semifinals. Does Kentucky tank this thing at all? Are they going for the perfect record? Do they play this weekend hard?
Yeah, I think they play it hard. I mean, I think they'd love to do that. I mean, and who wouldn't? I mean, if you have an opportunity to be perfect, you go for that. You know, there's that notion that, you know, sometimes a loss can be good. You can learn from a loss if you're a team like Kentucky. That way it takes that pressure off. But, man, I think at this stage in the game, if you're Kentucky, you keep the pedal to the metal. You go full throttle. You try to blow through this tournament, be the #1 overall national seed in the NCAA tournament, and if you can keep running it there. They're going to be tested, maybe not so much this week, but certainly in that NCAA tournament, they're going to run into a few matchups, depending on what the committee does to them, where teams can kind of slow them down a little bit, and I'll be interested to see what happens. But Kentucky, they're an amazing team.
Yeah, no doubt. And I agree with you. They've got to go. They've got to go all out. No holding back.
Yeah.
Go for the undefeated season, no doubt. All right. Well, the only good thing that is over you guys is we swept you in softball. That was pretty impressive, outscoring 1-5. So that's the only break.
You're pulling a softball score out on me. I didn't even know that. I haven't kept up with my Gamecock softball.
Hey, I told you, basketball season's it's pretty thin.
We're talking women's basketball. The USC women, they're the SEC champs.
Yeah, that's congratulations to that.
That's what they want, and I've covered some women's games this year. I'm not ashamed to say that. I think I've covered women's basketball games this year than I have my entire career combined before this year. But that was a program that, like the men, were in the doldrums, and now they're out drawing the men. They are getting more fans in their arena for the women's games, 12 to 18,000, than they are for the men. And everybody loves a winner, and that's what Frank Martin's trying to look at what Don Staley did and say, hey, they can do this. I mean, people don't realize Gamecock basketball, they're the only team in the SEC that hasn't won an NCAA tournament game in 40 years. I mean, Richard Nixon was in the White House the last time the Gamecocks won an NCAA tournament game. They've had a losing record in the ACC every year that they've been in the conference, except for 4. It's been a very tough run for them. So Frank Martin has his work cut out for him, but he is, as I said at the beginning, he's making some progress here. Mizzou fans know Frank Martin knows what he's doing from his case, and he's always going back. It's kind of rivalry between these teams because Frank Martin remembered, going to Columbia and playing Mizzou, and he appreciated the fan interest there and the media interest that they have at Mizzou basketball, and he wants to turn the other Columbia into something like that.
Yeah, he's I got a lot of respect for him. I mean, he always has nice things to say about Mizzou when he's here, and so yeah, he's got a tough job. But if there's a guy that's got the thick skin who could do it, it's certainly Frank Martin, and I'm pulling for him. I hope he does well, and it just makes the conference better too. It makes those matchups even better. So, Kevin, thanks for your time. Good luck here with the SEC tournament. How's your baseball team looking? Good again?
I think they're supposed to be pretty good. They lost to Clemson in the annual rivalry series, but they've won 5 straight since then. So baseball's always strong in the Palmetto State, and the Gamecocks will be rolling your way eventually. So,
check
them out.
Yeah, we'll check that out for sure. All right, Kevin, thanks. Good stuff as always. Good luck in whatever little tournament you guys may end up in. The CBI or the
CBI, baby.
There it is. Hey, at least it's postseason for you guys. Kevin McCrarey from South Carolina Radio Network. We'll catch up with him again real soon. And, of course, Mizzou coverage at MissouriNet.com. And for more of the Gamecocks, SportsTalkSC.com. I'm Bill Pollack. Thanks for watching.